a near perfect afternoon away in Croydon. Who? A sentence that I thought I'd never say. Crystal Palace 1, Chelsea 3 in the Premier League. That sends Rosenior's boys up to top 4 at time of recording. And a near perfect afternoon for Chelsea. A near perfect afternoon. And I'll get into why. Of course, they did score a goal very, very late on, which Robert Sanchez can feel disappointed about in terms of how his team defended in front of him. Sanchez had a good game. And actually, Rosenior has won 4 of his 5 games in charge of Chelsea, and indeed the one game he didn't win, I probably put at Rob Sanchez's door to a large degree. Bearing in mind, this gaffer's just been parachuted into Chelsea, and, you know, if we go away to Naples and win midweek, we're going to have some serious conversations about how well Liam Rosenior has started. But yeah, it was a great game, no injuries. Of course, we were without, easy for me to say, that alliteration, without Cole Palmer. Like a thigh injury or something. We're all concerned about him, but no Palmer, no problem, because we've got Estevao Willian and all the Samba boys, I think, and Joao Pedro, Estevao and André Santos performed very well. I did say with the appointment of Liam Rosenior that I think Santos is going to be a huge player for us. He's such a talent. And, yeah, man, I'm feeling good. So welcome back to Football Therapy with me, your host, Gian. This is your match review, like I said, of Crystal Palace 1, Chelsea 3. Thank you for joining me. If you're watching on YouTube, please do consider liking and subscribing. And if you do subscribe, hit the bell. Why not? And if you're watching on Spotify, please do follow and give me a 5-star review. And, of course, that's available by searching Football Therapy Podcast on other great podcast platforms as well. Right, so let me set the scene. I know Palace are winless in loads of games and they're meant to be a disaster club, right? But going into this, it was tough, and I'll tell you why. Because they've smoothed it over with Oliver Glasner, a good coach, to the point where he was being applauded on the pitch. Yeah, so they've smoothed things out. Yeah, smoothed out. And of course, Sod's Law, Ismail Assar, he's back from AFCON, and Munoz, back from injury, Spawn, ready for Chelsea game, just in the way Wilfried Zaha always used to be ready for Chelsea. Players returning to the side, they've got good players, and Lerma and Wharton midfield is strong. Want-away striker Jean-Philippe Mateta has, nailed his colours to the mast and is playing well for the team. And the vibes were up at Selhurst after a terrible, torrid time. Why am I doing so much alliteration? Point being, though, this could have been tough, yeah? And at points it did. Even when they went down to 10 men because of Wharton's deserved second yellow, they found a bit of they got that, I say fortuitous goal. It was a good goal, but I felt bad for the goalkeeper, Rob Sanchez. But they got that goal, despite being a man down, the home crowd got behind him. And a young, again, hate that word, but a developing Chelsea side had to deal with a bit of momentum from the home team in Palace, and we stood up to it well, Kept that 2-goal margin, and no injuries, nice bit of rotation, not like a nice bit of shape change from the Chelsea manager, preparing for what is a huge midweek game, and you have to say, big tick job, but done. So let's take a little looky look, shall we? It was a back three system from Ollie Glasner's Crystal Palace, as you can see here on the screen. A 4-2-3-1, it's listed as Chelsea, but it never really is that. Reece James as a sort of conventional right back / right centre back at times, pushing up. Trev playing slightly on the right, sometimes centrally. Benoit Badiashile, who started like a horror show and actually settled into the game very nicely. Cucurella, left back, getting a much better game. We had the Kai Santos double pivot that I've been talking about quite a lot lately, which I'm very pleased to see. I thought Santos had an excellent game. He was sort of very central all over the gaff, as was sort of Caicedo. Maybe Caicedo was a bit more box-to-box, and Santos was a little bit more of a regista, saying more central areas. Fernandez in the number 10, of course, converting the penalty to get yet another goal and assist this season. He is racking up his GAs big time. Estevao starting on the right wing, playing incredibly well, looking devastating on the break. Rosenior very much deployed him as a transitional weapon here, which worked very well. Neto playing out of position on the left, had a pretty stinky game. We can talk about that. And Joao Pedro, I said he'll start in this game over Delap. and he did. And he scored, I think, his 8th or 9th non-penalty goal of the season. Like, he's got a lot of criticism from me as well. Rightly in a lot of times, but, you know, it was a good goal, bro. Yeah? And he also won a penalty. So, you know, in the Brazilian boy, Santos was good in midfield. Estevão got a goal and assist. João Pedro got a goal and won a penalty. We'll speak about the penalty. And, yeah, bro, it's nice. It's looking really good. Of course, we saw late substitutions from Rosenior, but he kept his powder dry because it was looking good. You know, he waited till the sort of last sort of 15 plus minutes, of course, there's a lot of stoppage time, to make changes. Hato and Gittins not doing great, but Delap holding up the ball a little bit. Gusto coming on to play midfield. Reece James goes into midfield as well. So we had Wesley kind of playing as a right back when that happened. And then we had a centre back at right back and 2 right backs in midfield, which is very Enzo Maresca of Liam Rosenior. But heck, it worked, bro. Like, he wanted to box out the midfield well. He did it well. And let's have a look at what went down. So, interestingly here, if you look at your screen, for those of you watching on YouTube and Spotify, pretty even in the first half in terms of momentum. There was a good period before the Chelsea opener that Palace had the ball, but we were always going to have to suffer, I think. It was a pretty evenly and keenly contested first half, and then we were just dominant throughout the second half. We came out, we were on a 1-goal lead, and we just said, right, let's do what we need to do and put our foot on their ruddy throats. Walton was very charitable in getting 2 very quick yellow cards, very deserved yellow cards as well. And of course at the end, they put in, when they're down to 10 men, they're sort of like, sod it, we're down to 10 men, whatever, let's go for it. And maybe a little bit of complacency from the Chelsea boys, 3-0 up against 10 men, you know, they got a massive game in midweek, maybe their attention drops a little bit. And Rosenior will be concerned about that. But like I said, the goal they score from Richards, we'll talk through the goals in a moment. I do feel bad for Sanchez. I'm really annoyed at Sanchez for 2 games this season. Old Trafford and the semi-final against Arsenal. I think if Sanchez has, like, you know, like the game he had today, if he has that at home against Arsenal, we probably, I don't know if we beat Arsenal in the semi-final, but we probably draw with them, which means any win at the Emirates, we go to the final. So, like, yeah, I'm going to do my classic line. I'm reserving judgment on Sanchez, but I'm very pleased with the gaffer so far, to be honest, mate. It's such a tough job. I know he's meant to fit in seamlessly because of how the ownership have set up the club, and they'll be very happy with themselves, how it looks like that so far. But still, he's still got to do it. As you can see, it's an incredibly even first half. Pretty much identical possession, expected goals, 2 big chances each. We had 1 more shot than them, a goalkeeper save. The second half, let's say more dominant for Chelsea. They still had chances, so Rob Sanchez had a good game. They had more shots ultimately. I think a lot of them came towards the end. So let's go through the timeline before we talk about player performances, shall we? Early doors, Caicedo gets booked for a yellow. Now, I think it was a little bit soft, the booking, but he does concede 2 fouls after that. Yeah, he concedes 2 fouls after that, Caicedo, and I always talk about how often he rides a yellow card well, and I guess he did, and it takes some stones from whether it was Enzo Maresca before, or indeed Liam Rosenior now, to be like, alright, keep him on. I thought he might get not hooked at half time, but like 60 minutes and put Reece James in midfield. Do you know what I mean? Because we can't have Caicedo suspended again. You don't want him second guessing his tackles. And actually, he had a bit of a battle with Adam Wharton in the midfield, which actually ended up to Wharton getting sent off. So yeah, man. So he seems to ride that. Estevão scores in the 34th minute. I won't say against the run of play because the game's pretty even. But it's an incredible goal. Superb on the break. He's with Mitchell, who's a very pacey fullback. And, you know, by all accounts, a very good defender. And just gets in front of him and finishes beautifully across the face of goal. And it's just an amazing, oh, yes, he's friggin' awesome. And look, in this time where a lot of Chelsea fans are rightly frustrated with the model. There are players that I really like Gusto and stuff like that, but there are players here that they have signed that we like, whether it's the £100 million men in midfield, Fernandes and Caicedo. Cucurella's come good, isn't he? And then you think about like the sort of cheaper players that you don't spend silly money on that become gems, like Andre Santos, like Cole Palmer, who of course was absent today, like Estevao Willian. Of course, questions will always be asked of the likes of Gittins and Garnacho. Time will tell. But 30 million quid for Delap will never be a bad signing, no matter what. You could say 5 million for Gu. But also, Joao Pedro, what was he? 55 million. So he's quite expensive, 55 million. And then he's sort of quietly getting better again, like he was in the Club World Cup. He's kind of, at the moment, Joao Pedro, in what is his first season for Chelsea. I know he had the Club World Cup and scored, was it 3 goals, whatever, scored in the final, scored the semi, against his former Brazilian club as well. But at the moment, Joao Pedro, in his full debut Premier League season, as a 23-year-old player, is on for like 15 plus non-penalty goals. That's pretty darn good, especially in a side where, you don't funnel everything through him like a Man City, Erling Haaland earlier in the season. He is a false 9. I don't often like seeing him as a striker, but keep playing like this, mate, and we can change the conversation. This is good. So he's on for like a really strong return, man. So second half, Estevao plays it to Joao Pedro and assists his goal, and it is a really, really good goal. It's a great finish. He does really, really well, Joao Pedro, and he's clearly feeling himself at the beginning of that second half, because not only does he execute a great finish to put Chelsea 2-0 up, he wins the penalty on the hour mark. Now, we might as well talk about the penalty. It's Joao Pedro hits the ball onto his arm, who's down by his side. Now, I think the way they explained this is because it's dogzo, but because it's accidental dogzo, denying of a goal scoring opportunity, it's not a red card. Like if someone's running through in goal, you pull them back, you get a red card. It's a deliberate dogzo. This was an accidental dogzo, so he only got a yellow. They later got a player sent off anyway for the bants, but he only got a yellow. But because it was accidental, he only gets a yellow, but it's still a penalty. Now, to continue this very complicated segment on the penalty, it seems like had that just been a handball somewhere else in the box, like from an angle, it wouldn't have been a penalty. But because literally that ball is going in the net, nowhere near the keeper, and the arm stops it from going in, that's what makes it a dogso, but yellow card offence, penalty. Non-dismissal. Right? Are you with me? Because apparently that's it. So I get it. You'd feel kind of annoyed that if your arm's by your side and they kick the ball against it, it's like, well, why don't we just constantly do that in the box and win penalties? Kick the ball, deliberately aim. We've always said that, to aim for people's hands, especially with the UEFA handball rule. But because it's literally the ball's going in and that's what blocks it. Fine. I would feel a little bit frustrated as a Palace fan, but I kind of understand it from that situation. Now, I wondered if Joao Pedro would score his first penalty of the season, because he's racking up loads of non-penalty goals. But no, Enzo Fernandez takes it, he pulls rank, and converts in the 64th minute to make it 3-0 to the Chelsea. And if you remember, before Cole Palmer took that penalty, remember there was a time, even before the Noni Madueke, Nico Jackson embarrassment argument, and Cole's just like, give it to me, mate. But even before that, Enzo Fernandez, when he arrived at Chelsea, I think he was supposed to be the penalty taker. And remember that time when he goes, Cole, give it to Cole. And then, the rest is history. Palmer just sort of scored every penalty, and, he's the undisputed taker. But behind him, it was always supposed to be Fernandez. And not just because he's, the vice captain, because we got the captain on the pitch. He is a penalty guy, And he scores open play goals, whether it's headers, finishes, he gets assists from corners. Fernandez is a good footballer. So we're 3-0 up, a couple of changes. Walton does a couple of silly fouls in the space of quite literally 5 minutes. And it is he was gagging for it because he got the yellow. He did another foul. It wasn't a yellow. And then he does a stonewall second yellow on Caicedo. He's off. He just lost his head, basically. It was absolutely a second yellow. What a silly sausage. And I'm thinking, we're going to win this 4-5-0. Liam Rosenior takes the opportunity to make a lot of changes to protect players. He brings off Caicedo, of course, who's on a yellow. He brings off Estevao, who has recently recovered from illness, not injury. And Pedro Neto, who probably, needs a rest because he plays so much football but wasn't having a great game. Probably our, least impressive performer, playing out of position on the left. Loads of changes. Then they do get a goal. It's a goal mouth scramble. He's kind of being obstructed. Robert Sanchez in goal. Enzo Fernandez sort of falls in front of him, and I feel bad for him. As much as I'm so annoyed of him every now and again in these high-profile games, I felt bad for him in that instance for Chelsea to concede. And we hold out, and we do weather a storm. If you look at the attacking momentum meter here on the left at the end of the game, it's we have to dig in, and the chemistry has sort of been compromised because Rosenior has correctly made changes. But that's obviously, when you protect the players, you take a little bit of a risk in terms of the flow of the game, and we had to just dig in a little bit, and Sanchez had to make another couple of saves, which he does. And we win 3-1 away from home against a Palace that probably felt like this was an opportunity to get all the boys back together. And it's a great win. No injuries, nice bit of rotation, 3 goals, had to dig in, show a bit of character. Of course, another day, you don't want to have to dig in like that. But you have to talk about the context of where we are under Rosenior, where these players, how long he's had with the players, everything really. So let's talk about player performances then. Sanchez in goal, very, very good. Big tick. Thank you very much. Hombre. Again, we're going to do the end of season Sanchez review. That will probably be a whole friggin' episode. But I need to see a masterclass, at the Emirates, in the Maradona midweek. Do you know what I mean? All these kind of things. Reece James, very serviceable. Maybe not his best, but they obviously protecting him as well. Chalobah, good. He's got a lower rating than Badiashile. Badiashile started the game awfully. He nearly gave them a goal early doors, and then he made another mistake in the opening few minutes. But to his credit, the Frenchman did settle. He did settle down, and he actually had a good performance in the end. And just did the basics, shaped his body well to clear it, whether it was a header or a knee or a kick. Nothing too fancy. Literally did the basics right. I'm a big, strong man. I'm going to use my body well, and I'm going to play the percentages. I'm not going to try anything fancy. Excuse me. I'm just going to play the percentages, and he settled into that type of game, which is what I want. From a player like Badiashile, that's what I want, man. Kukurea, I thought was excellent, actually. Caicedo, good. He rode the yellow card well. Santos, I think Santos can be transformative. Genuinely, the midfield pairing of Kai Santos, and I am gonna keep trying to, put that in. I said Steve-O early doors before anyone else was saying Steve-O, and it seems to have catched on. Obviously, it's a little bit nerdy and niche to say Kai Santos when talking about a pivot. But, I think I knew Santos was being criminally underused by Enzo Maresca. That was probably one of my biggest criticisms of him. And of course, Rosenior was and is in love, to use a Marescaism, with Santos. So that was always going to be a huge boon for us. And, a little bonus could be, like we've said previously, Jorel Hato being used a bit more. I thought Enzo was pretty darn good. He had a couple of silly moments, especially on the goal. When he's falling on the goal, he should be defending better. But his penalty was excellent. His work rate was great. His leadership was strong. Especially when, is it the cutback for Joao Pedro, when he's desperate for the cutback and you think he's going to be angry, but then he's just so happy Joao Pedro scores because he's a proper team player, Enzo Fernandez. And make no bones about it. He cares. He will score goals and assist and all this kind of stuff, but he doesn't care if he does. He cares if the team wins, and that really does come through. Pedro Neto, I've already waxed lyrical about. Keep going, my friend. I don't think we'll see. Again, end of season review as a striker. I'd be very, very interested to see him in a different role. I don't really like him as a number 10 at all in this Chelsea side. And I'm worried about him as a number 9. I wouldn't mind seeing him on the left, genuinely. In games like today where you see Pedro Neto, I'm not going to dig him out because he's been pretty darn consistent the last sort of 18 months. But he's not a left winger. In a game where we're not trusting Garnacho or Gittins, I'll just be very interested to see Joao Pedro play there because he's played there before. What does he, he might be a bit more direct and inside, but that's fine. And of course, substitutes were fine. It was just about it was about protecting the starters, not getting second yellow for Caicedo, that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And ultimately seeing it out and protecting players and not getting injuries, and we achieved all of that. And I mean, I'm pretty darn happy. We get away with that. We move on. If we, like I said, if we win in Naples, people are going to have to seriously talk about Rosenior as what a strong start. I'm just so annoyed that things went the way they did in that semi-final. It's frustrating. Again, I don't want to just speak about Rob Sanchez, especially after he had a very good game today. But let me know what you've... I'm coughing and choking. Let me know what you think, guys. Please do leave your comments all over the gaff on your podcast platforms or here on YouTube. Do consider supporting me, liking and subscribing, commenting, sharing, following and 5-starring on the podcast platforms. And man, I hope to see you back here very soon. Peace.